thank you so much. And I might just start with you, Tom, because we talked about this free speech issue and what's going on college campuses. I know everybody in the room is watching this with horror as things play out with Israel and some of the other issues. But just this past Monday, you provided that testimony to the Legislative Ad Hoc Committee on Freedom of Expression at the Arizona Public Universities regarding intimidation by faculty and some students at ASU. During those remarks, you explained the problems began when faculty detailed their opposition to teaching the concept of free enterprise. You also noted that the faculty had no accountability and that no one, not even the university, could tell them what to teach. Can you explain some of the challenges that you are facing in dealing with the faculty at ASU and any other universities that you may have been working with?
Well, there's a lot to talk about when we talk about free speech in America, and pardon me for referring to my notes, but I can't remember it all. It's so vast. But I guess I'd start by saying that the freedom of speech problem we have in America is much bigger than most of us think. I mean, because they are trying to suppress or abridge any thought that they don't agree with. And so it's happening in universities, it's happening in the media, it's happening in corporations, it's happening in the public square. Mm-hmm. And it's working. I'd say it's working. Now, we're totally polarized, I think, with the other side. I'm going to say that mostly polarized, that conservatives, as I told Newt Gingrich here at lunch, you know, as conservatives, we overvalue the past, and liberals overvalue the future. I mean, so I would admit to that. But what we believe as traditionalists is that America is good. The goodness of America, we believe in that, the principles, faith, family, and freedom. The left sees America as flawed. You know, it has the what's called, you know, the stain of slavery, which we all, you know, nobody supports that anymore, and for a long, long time, and every country probably went through that, but they won't let us forget that. I mean, so basically they're looking for some reason to not love America, and that's the best one they could find. And as we all know, the left is wonderful at definitions, and they're constantly redefining things. And so when it comes to free speech, they know that that's the way they can push their ideas, you know, down everybody's throats without opposition. So they've redefined free speech into good speech and hate speech. Mm-hmm. And so now on campuses and anywhere, I mean, oh, you can't say that. That's hate speech. You know, when we tried to bring Dennis Prager and Charlie Kirk to speak at ASU, the faculty erupted, calling them haters and homophobes and all kinds of names like that. And it really was so obvious that it really blew the topic wide open and exposed, I think, what's really going on in our faculty, which is a 40-year march to take over our public universities. So the two places really where freedom of speech are being attacked the worst is in our government and our universities. Now, in our government, let me just remind you about the Hunter Biden laptop cover-up by the federal government, by the cover-up of the Chinese Wuhan lab theory. They disallowed alternate views on what caused COVID. They talked about misinformation. I think at one point, President Biden tried to appoint a minister of truth, but that kind of didn't go over very big. Since Biden has taken office, he's censored the opposition. He's weaponized the federal government toward his political opponents. And locally, there's a large Christian university based in Phoenix called Grand Canyon University. And the Biden administration has fined them $38 million for some tiny little infraction that they're accusing them of. But it's really just another example of the weaponization of our own government and in an attempt to control free speech, I would say. And hopefully the Missouri versus Biden Supreme Court decision that is in is in the works will make a big difference there. And then we get to public universities. 63% of college students today feel intimidated or suppressed. 44% believe it's okay to shout down a speaker that you don't agree with. And 41% believe that violence is okay to counter hate speech. So where did they learn this? I don't think they learned it from their parents. I think they learned it in school. Last month I was at the University of Kentucky, which is my alma mater, and the Young Americas for Freedom group had sponsored Matt Walsh to give his What is a Woman speech with my support, I would add. And the leftists pulled down all the posters, and the university did nothing about it. And so if the reverse were true, that certainly wouldn't have happened. So I think this whole idea of victims and oppressors is being taught to our students, and we just have to change that. It's been happening for a long time, and it's pretty clear that that's where it's starting. And then also all the diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory, ESG, SEL, all those things are intended and are working in our colleges to suppress conservative thought. And that's what they're really, I think that's the ultimate reason for it. Because if you have a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer that's in your college and they're walking around with posters and having meetings to discuss it, I mean, it is, you can't believe how entrenched it is. When I walk through the halls of some of the colleges that I support, you just see all these posters about liberal topics that are, so it's really obvious. So anyway, there's a lot of problems to discuss, and
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you're engaged on these issues, because clearly they are a part of the fabric of everything that we're working on to combat. And I think as legislators, looking at this, how do we, as legislators, think through? I mean, we're appropriating funds for some of these college campuses and things like that. And Representative, when, your perspective on this, because of your own experience, born and growing up in communist Vietnam, during the Joint Committee on the Hearing, you made a powerful statement. I grew up in fear. I was not allowed to talk about what my parents do because someone might toss a hand grenade into our home. And you've seen the end of the story with the fall of Saigon, where there's only one viewpoint in the end. Can you elaborate on this view and how current speech climate on college campuses compare with a truly communist China? And then kind of fast forward to the work that you and Senator Karrin and so many Arizona legislators are doing to kind of figure out if there's a solution or if we can put some teeth into that funding to perhaps have a little more control on what's happening on the campus.
Thank you for the question, and I want to thank the Senate, Arizona Senate as well, for allowing me to be a co-chair of this committee. And I always want to acknowledge Anthony Karrin, my co-chair in the Senate as well. So after 2 hearings, it was very clear to me that conservative views are not welcome on campus. It just, let's be honest about it, it's extremely clear. And I picked up a couple of things, and I think Tom and I mentioned that earlier. A couple of things is, one of the comments from the attorney representing ASU said that, but we let them speak, right? We let them speak. Excuse me, but there is no one in this room, anywhere in this nation, or any organization, I would allow them to say, I'm going to let you exercise your constitutional rights. There is something inherently wrong with that statement. The other one I picked up was interesting. We have a portal that would allow you to anonymously submit your complaints. Anonymously, and I actually brought it up. Why do I need to speak to you anonymously?
Right.
Right? Is there a fear element somewhere in here that we don't know about? How about Mr. Attorney go back to ASU and said, why would you ever need for people to anonymously submit their comment? Well, we'll go back and ask. Mr. Lewis, you saw how many times the attorney said, we're going to go back to ASU and ask. And so I'm going to tie this in a little bit with the fear factor. The reason I can't talk about it because I'm afraid of something, right? The third disturbing thing that I noticed I saw was, the fact that professors were outside of the entrance taking down names. So when I asked the question, is that a normal procedure for ASU? He said, yeah, that's a normal procedure. I gotta tell you, it's called North Vietnam. When people start taking names down, you should be concerned. We should all be concerned. So if this were a movie that we're watching today, I'll just say it. I've seen the end of it, and it's called The Fall of Saigon. When we have one single view, and that only one single view is accepted by a guy named Ho, you have execution, you have your freedom taken away. When I say execution, I actually can tell you that many of my family members were actually executed in a re-education camp. So I'm seeing in the 48 years that I lived here, I'm starting to see this familiar sight coming to us here. So I just want to say this. There are no more helicopters on rooftops. This is it. We have nowhere else to go but to defend this place. I'll say it. My name is Quang Nguyen, and I'm not saying anything anonymously.
Yes.
This is it. Thank you.
Powerful. That's so powerful. Thank you so much for those comments. And Karrin, Robson, you've become, and you've been working on education issues and free speech expression since departing from your role as the Arizona Board of Regents. For example, you created the Regents Cup, which I participated in and really enjoyed that competition, which encourages free and open debate between college students. In your view, what can university administrators and state board members do to better protect freedom of speech and expression on colleges' campuses?
Well, thank you for the question. And before I get to the answer, I just want to say thank you to Quang for being willing to tell your story, because a lot of people think it cannot happen here, but you know it can. And so your story is just so immensely powerful and needs to be told. So thank you. And Tom, thank you for your leadership in what you're doing. I think it is through people like you and your efforts that give us hope for America and liberty and what we all hold dear. So yeah, so the Regents Cup, I have to set a little more context. When I was dropping my son off at school one day to high school, he out of the blue said to me, "Mom, they're for diversity of everything but thought." And this from my 15-year-old. I'm like, where'd that come from? But it matters. I mean, there are kids out there that are shut down. They cannot speak their mind. They're canceled, they're shut down, their grades are impacted. So a couple years later, I was appointed to the Board of Regents, and so I made it a mission to create a free speech competition among Arizona's 3 universities. It's grown each year, and now there's an effort underway to have that model around the country and do a national free speech competition. I'm also serving on the American Council of Trustees and Alumni Board, otherwise known as ACTA, and they're doing phenomenal work on university campuses around the country with a Braver Angels organization that is teaching our kids how to have conversations, how to disagree and still be friends. When we can no longer talk to one another, when we can no longer use our words, the creation of knowledge will cease. When you think about the First Amendment and free speech, it's the First Amendment for a reason. You look at the great advances over the last 250 years, they came from America because people were not afraid to throw out ideas and be wrong, be corrected, prove themselves, or change course, because we weren't afraid. But when you're afraid to throw out those ideas, I mean, it goes to the scientific method. When you quit throwing out theories, everything ceases. And that's what the left wants. The denigration of our education system over the last 40, 50, 60 years, and the takeover by the socialists and the progressives, it's been incremental. And it has crept up on us, And now we see it in full bloom. You know, if there was a silver lining to COVID, it woke parents up about what was going on in K-12 education. And I'm gonna give a shout out for a couple people in the room today, Karrin Warner and Amy Carney, 2 members of the Scottsdale School Board. They were minding their own business, raising their kids, and they discovered during COVID what was going on. They stepped up and ran for council. And we have one of them now gonna run for the state senate here in Arizona. That's what it's gonna take. And what's happened in the last month on university campuses across this country has exposed the rot in higher education in America. The pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, anti-American sentiment that has been displayed should wake every American up. We've got to fix it. So we have an opportunity now. We can't deny what's going on, and we have an opportunity. And so as policymakers and leaders, you have to hold your university's feet to the fire. And we have to get back to basics. One other thing, I know my time is running short, but when I took the same son to school, when he went off to college at Texas A&M, I don't know if we have anybody from Texas, but thank you, Texas. Because during his orientation, up on the screen, they had all the general education requirements. 6 hours of American history and American government and American economic systems. I come home to Arizona, and I ask our Board of Regents, what do we require for American history and American government at our universities? 0. I'm proud to report that that has changed. We updated our general education policies, and now it's required. But when I left the Board of Regents, I told my colleagues, your job has just begun, because now you have to watch what they're teaching them, what their version of American history is. And in the words of Winston Churchill, a country that does not know its past has no future. So we have to get back to basics. And as legislators, you have the ability to force your universities to teach the basics. You need to let them know what the desired outcomes of knowledge and skills and competencies are. And at the top of that list should be American history and American government. And we have got to quit apologizing for American exceptionalism, because we are the last best hope of the world. And one final thing. I had the opportunity to spend a few minutes with Nigel Farage, who led the Brexit movement. And he said something to us, this was June of 2021. He said, the world is watching you, America. And as America goes, the world goes. 2 months later, we all watched the debacle in Afghanistan. And you watch those people clinging to the bottom of that C-17. And I thought, this is what happens when America leaves the scene. It's chaos, both literally and figuratively. So we have to. Those of you in the room today, you can make the difference. You can make sure that in your colleges and universities in your state, that we get back to basics and teach our students the fundamentals of American history and American government and American exceptionalism. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Karrin. You know, Karrin, you and I were talking with Amy and Karrin earlier about, as school board members, what is your goal? What is your objective? And both of them, without hesitation, said curriculum as the example of what they wanted to focus on. That and kind of, upgrading the superintendents and making sure that they're actually doing their job. I want to just take one last minute to ask Representative Quang, in the policy that you are considering and working on right now, what are the key elements that legislators should really look for as they're thinking of trying to create more leverage within that appropriations? Have you figured out what your principles and what you're really kind of try to give and empower the legislators with?
We actually drafted quite a few things, including changes to ABOR, Arizona Board of Regents, to sort of make things a little tighter. But honestly, hitting the pocket is where it counts, right? Mm-hmm. So as a legislator, and I happen to have the chairman of appropriations sitting over here too, I'm going to have a conversation about future appropriations for all universities. And like I said, we got to hit them where it hurts, and that is the wallet. So there are a lot of things, and I'm not going to talk about I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag yet. But I think it's important for us to understand that freedom of expression doesn't exist. So how do we fix that? So we fix that by forcing people to do what they should be doing already. And it's really unfortunate. A lot of times we make laws to force people to do things that they should be doing, and I'm not seeing that. I'll give you an example. Last year, a couple of years ago, I brought a bill that would allow CCW holders, concealed carry, to be on campus if you're older than 21 and you don't have any. Obviously, if you have a CCW, you're not a criminal. It's amazing how many people came up from the university level and fought that. And so the way I think of it is this way. You have a constitution. It's applicable to every square inch of the United States and to every, I'll just say it, law-abiding citizens, right? But there's an invisible line around the campus that said, no. We're good. As a matter of fact, I did ask the Board of Regent, a representative, and I said, do you believe in the US Constitution? Yes. Why did you fight me? Right? So here's another point I want to make. Somebody from ASU is inviting me to speak on freedom of expression in the next few months. So I'm going to see how that's going to go. U of A already came out and said, we want you to come speak about communism, the evils of communism, and freedom of expression. So let's see how many of those professors out there putting flyers up against me. See how many of them actually protest against me. That, Mr. Lewis, would make our points, correct? So I can't wait for that to happen. And just so you know, the left has been calling me a white nationalist. I'm just letting you know.
That's right.
I even have a name that's not common to just about anybody. So I trying to explain to them that, you might want to find a different term to describe me. So they came back and actually said, and I quote, these days, you don't have to be white to be a white nationalist. There you have it.
They've redefined everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Mr. Price, Tom, thank you for your sharing your values and your ideas here and for creating the atmosphere to really work on this legislation. If I only knew an organization that did model policy for legislators, maybe we look forward to seeing your model policy when you're finished and maybe making it ALEC model policy going forward. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.